So, we're doing this again. Vivian, the bodacious brunette of searing spells, is hands down one of the most beloved partners in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. This isn't Vivian's first rodeo going solo in this game though. I originally gave her the spotlight a couple of years ago, but the little ember would nearly be extinguished several times in her forward-moving journey. Now, it's high time she's given a second chance to prove she can rise out of the shadows and above the ashes like the phoenix we know she is. This time, however, we're starting from the beginning. The very beginning. How far can Vivian go? It's time we found out. It's showtime! The challenge starts proper after our first encounter with Lord Crump. Since Vivian's a partner that starts out being balanced around Chapter 4, it stands to reason that she has an above average attack power for this point in the game that doesn't even need to land the action command on Shade Fist to one-shot Goombas. And since she can target enemies no matter where they are, there's not much difficulty to be had early in the game. She can even handily defeat Gus before we even meet Professor Frankly for the first time, as Shade Fist isn't affected by top spiky traits like his spear. And her Shade Fist isn't only good at hitting around spiky traits, but also enemies positioned in difficult to reach places. Looking at Blooper for example, she can immediately target him if you want her to. Even if you couldn't, she can take the tentacles out immediately in a single turn. You might be wondering though, why do you want to actually bother doing that? Well, it's rather simple. For some indiscernible reason, Blooper has 2 defense while on the ceiling. You're actually losing out on damage by attacking directly first, especially when the tentacles have only 3 HP as opposed to Blooper's 12. The main body can't even be burned while on the ceiling unless he was burned while on the ground first, so targeting the tentacles first is ideal. You can win this fight in as few as 5 turns without items. If you wanted to use a Fire Flower here, it could be over sooner, but I'd advise against that as I make it a rule to not spend my coins on items in my partner-only challenges. This is because, as demonstrated in my previous video, items can be extremely strong, especially when unrestricted, and I don't want this video to just be Vivian using the most powerful items possible with zero need to play around any of her weaknesses in the game. This rule is mainly here to force me to think strategically. Of course, if ever I'm required to buy items, that's different, but I'm not required to do so here. On an unrelated note, I'll try and mention fun facts on the side surrounding what I experienced in this challenge, or things I may have forgotten to mention. Also, if you're curious about my picks or music throughout the video, you can check the description down below. Now let's see our adventure properly begin. Chapter 1 is now upon us, and it's here we have more rules to discuss. To keep with the theme of only using Vivian in battle, all other partners have their HP set to 0 so they can't be switched in, though my other partners often seem to have an issue staying put. And I'm disallowing Vivian to be switched behind Mario since he can't help out in battle. Vivian's a big girl, she's gotta fend for herself. Though leading up to Hooktail, this game feels like it's on autopilot. Shade Fist can't burn bald clefts, but enough damage passes through Vivian's punch to hurt them, so we're allowed to save a POW block in Shuang Fortress. The bristles, however, do demand a POW block on account of their spikes, defense, and immunity to fire, so we simply have no choice but to here. Before too long, we arrive in Shuang Fortress, where we're able to wrestle both the Sun and Moon Stones away from the Fuzzies. Having only 3 HP, the action command for Shade Fist means nothing more than speeding up the animation. These Fuzzies just end up feeling more like a bunch of tedious battles over anything actually significant, especially when basic guards block any incoming damage. Gold Fuzzy isn't too threatening either, as its low HP means we 3-hit KO with Shade Fist, making this rather easy to do. It helps as well that the Fuzzy Horde doesn't interfere with Vivian's targeting. Red Bones, however, is a bit more complicated. Vivian doesn't exactly need items here, but you don't want to fight without at least a Fire Flower being used. Fighting without one, Vivian's max HP being only 15 will quickly show itself to be too little for now, since guarding is not enough to know the damage she's taking unless you're both accurate with your guards and lucky with Mario being targeted. It does not help either that Shade Fist isn't even guaranteed to burn Red Bones upon a successful action command, which is a shame because it means if you're unlucky, Red Bones won't burn to death and disappear and can in fact reanimate to continue its assault. However, there is value to be found in fighting without items, as the possibility of reinforcements means more star points and more level ups. I do want to try and beat this game at the lowest level possible for Vivian, but I'm not going to stress over it here because Vivian isn't strong enough to fight only the minimum battles anyway. She will need to grind later on in the game. And in case you're wondering, this is why I'm not going to be talking about the various enemies we'll see in the overworld that aren't required. With this obstacle out of the way, let's have some fun. We finally can access the 3 shiny sprites within Hooktail Castle and rank Vivian up to Super Rank, which at this point in the game is actually pretty busted. The 20 HP is par for the course, that's as much as Goombella, but, well, allow me to show you how much our new move Fiery Jinx breaks the fight with Hooktail. And we'll even get help from the most underrated badge in the game, Mega Rush P, to do it. See, Vivian's attack stat goes up by 1 for her Shade Fist, which means she does 3 damage per hit to Hooktail, giving her 1 defense. Which on its own isn't exactly game breaking, but it's still good for damage. But she also learns a new skill, Fiery Jinx. With this, she now has a 5 base power screen-wide piercing attack that also burns. Piercing moves are called that because when damage is being calculated, the enemy defense is ignored, which for this early in the game is absolutely obscene. Thanks to having Mega Rush P and Mario's copy of Last Stand, we are able to burn Hooktail alive. She tries to do as much to us as well with her Fiery Breath, an attack that does 4 damage to both Mario and Vivian, as well as crush us with her Stomp, which does 5 damage. But it's ultimately futile. We will want to guard the first 2 attacks, as there will always be Fire Breath and the Stomp both in that order. Afterwards, however, we'll want to always guard the Stomp and never guard the Fire to guarantee Vivian always takes 4 damage. If ever Mario ends a turn with less than 3 HP, just feed him a Horsetail, which we can find in Petal Meadows. Though I can't buy items like Horsetails can be acquired infinitely and for free. But since they restore only about 3 HP, they're not really renowned for their potency. Otherwise, keep using Shade Fist. Eventually, Vivian's HP will reach 1, Mega Rush P will activate, and your Shade Fist will start doing 8 damage. As long as you were able to hit Hooktail 3 times before reaching 1 HP, this fight is basically over. She'll eat the audience and try to heal outside of a fatal HP value, but... Fiery Jinx hits for 10 damage exactly. This is the power of Mega Rush. When your HP is at only 1, your attack is boosted by 5, which is a vital amount of extra power, giving Vivian access to KOs she otherwise wouldn't have. The only drawback is Vivian needs to be near death to take advantage of this badge, and since she's our only fighter and I'm not allowing myself to buy items like life streams are finite, meaning we simply cannot be reckless with this badge at all. Nonetheless, I think you can see where I was going with this. Even without relying on Mega Rush P, with an attack as strong as Fiery Jinx this early in the game, Vivian's power is going to prove to be pretty strong until the game catches up with her in Chapter 5. But before then, well, let's enjoy the ride while we can. Meanwhile, with Grotus and the X-Knots, we see that Vivian has in fact been helping Beldam at the same time. I guess she slipped away while Mario was distracted by Koops' dad? I don't know. But as long as she's helping me, I really don't care. Maybe she's just been hiding in my shadow the whole time when she got back. Since we have easier access to the Bianta Parlor now, it feels like a good time to explain how I use it in the video. Because only Vivian can act in battle, most badges here are of no use. An obvious and glaring exception though comes from the Power Rush P badges, which are only available in Access after Chapter 6. I personally don't have a problem with the limited rush badges you see in the overworld, but I don't feel comfortable buying any of these from here, as they essentially nullify any need for strategy beyond starting fights at low HP, and just laying waste to everything in your path. 5 HP to have +2 may not sound like a lot, but the numbers add up extremely quickly when you have more than one available to you. And it's just more fun in my opinion to find creative ways to activate the badges instead. Moving on, Chapter 2 is an otherwise mostly forgettable chapter in this journey. However, we do encounter the Shadow Sirens, and Vivian sees a timid girl who would suffer at the hands of her bully older sister. Unbeknownst to Vivian, this is actually a canon event, though it seems like perhaps there really are just 2 Vivians after all. I mean, we saw her with the Shadow Sirens earlier. Well, regardless, this is sure to be a fun conversation to be had with Beldam later. I can easily win this fight using Fiery Jinx twice, seeing how the Siren with the most HP, Marilyn, has only 12. A real blowout if you ask me. Past that, we have more fights in the Great Tree which are all small potatoes. There's also a Thunder Rage, which I'm picking up here alongside a variety of other items which will no doubt be of invaluable use later in the game, since Vivian's options without items leave her helpless against specific types of enemies. For now, just hold on to these until later. Now to fight Magnus von Grapple. 30 HP, a stomp that does 2 damage unguarded, deployed X-Fists that do 4 damage per turn but have only 2 HP max, and the Tremor that does absolutely goddamn nothing to Vivian. Yeah, she hovers above the ground so she's not hurt by quick attacks. After 3 Shade Fists, see the X-Fist come out and then launch a Fiery Jinx to incinerate them. We can just repeat this process and finish Chapter 2 with nary a worry. But then Chapter 3 happens and... oh boy, here we go. The Glitz Pit is all about fighting, and here's where minimum battles will become a little less cruel to us as we must battle our way to the top. Most fights here can easily be one-rounded with Fiery Jinx. Leading up to the Iron Clefts, the only real exceptions are the Handed Overs, who are 4 bandits, 2 of them being big and capable of sealing items to failed guards, and the Punk Rocks, 3 Hyperballed Clefts that are immune to fire entirely. Because the Handed Overs aren't immune to Fiery Jinx though, the normal bandits are both one-shot by the move. The big bandits after that aren't a big deal, you can easily beat them with Shade Fist with Vivian being nowhere near danger of fainting. The Punk Rocks meanwhile are more problematic as Vivian can't hurt them with fire, but her Shade Fist can KO them all one at a time with Power Plus P equipped, which fortunately is gotten for free in this chapter. So far, nothing has actually become an issue for us. However, if you're familiar with this game, you no doubt know what's lurking up ahead. Let's not waste any more time, the Armored Harriers are here, and are ready to cause us some serious heartache. These enemies are, as Gubella would put it, invulnerable to anything we can throw at them. You're intended to only be able to win this fight with Yoshi's help, as his gulp is the only weakness the Iron Clefs have. As a direct result of this, Mario and every partner normally available before Chapter 3 are bottlenecked into needing Yoshi's help to beat the game. So it's unfortunate, but regarding the question of whether you can beat Paper Mario with the Dolls in your door with only Vivian, the answer is no, you can't. Objection! Pay attention, boys, girls, and all others. It's here we need to talk about some techniques. Class is in session. It stands to reason that Vivian can't beat Chapter 3 traditionally, as she must beat the Iron Clefs to reach the end. But what if we could ignore the Iron Clefs entirely? Sounds like a fool's dream, but the reality is, it's up to you to make your dreams happen. Before Chapter 3, there's something important we need to take care of. There's a glitch I want to perform with Koops in the overworld that allows us to grab the Ultra Hammer early. There are several ways to set this up, but the most popular method is using Koops' Shell Toss before making contact with a cutscene trigger in Flurry's house. What I use, however, involves ST and can be done as early as Chapter 1. I don't know the specifics, but the tutorial I saw needs for Koops to be first deployed on the right side of Zest's kitchen, while you move parallel to the cutscene trigger where Mario steps under contact lenses. Then, after letting Koops go, you need to fire a second Shell Toss, but before he can actually be fired in front of Mario, move downwards to activate the cutscene. What you'll see then is that Shell Toss isn't used, but a jump in fact is executed. What has happened here is that the jump we attempted is stored, allowing us to jump off the stair of Zest's kitchen, and get this, fly into the air, being able to reach the Ultra Hammer way before we actually need to get it. And here's the thing, since Mario isn't doing any fighting in this challenge, I don't imagine anyone should have a problem with this, seeing that I don't benefit from the added power of this hammer now. I had another idea originally involving trying this glitch with receiving an email which can be made available after getting the blimp ticket from Don Pianta, but it turns out it may not even be possible to do with Koops, as it's only been documented as possible with Yoshi, who we can't get. Fortunately, all I had to do was play out a new save file up to Chapter 1 where Koops is recruited, set the glitch up, and die from jumping in the water, as the game maintains the storage between save files, as long as Mario doesn't jump at all in between that time. This is the reason it's possible to attempt and even beat the Pit of Unended Trials as early as in the prologue without using any cheats. With the Ultra Hammer available, the Super Hammer you're supposed to collect partway through the Major League is no longer needed. But what realistically would the Ultra Hammer really do right now beyond allowing us to reach the dubious paper in the Minor League locker room early? That surely can't do us any good. Well, that's just it. It doesn't. Collecting the note doesn't magically put us in the Major League, and we can't even reach you without Yoshi anyways, so clearly battling our way to the top isn't going to work. This leaves us with only one option. Yeah, we're gonna Billy Mitchell this chapter. We're not actually going to do any fighting in the Glitz Pit, and so we never enter the minor league locker room. We're actually instead just going to steal the Crystal Star because fighting is overrated. So what we're instead doing is meeting with Grubba about becoming fighters, denying signing the contract, and instead spin jumping onto his cupboard, leaving through the vents, and then walking right back in the room. What's interesting is that even though we can walk right through the vent outside of Grubba's room since it lacks any collision, we can't just walk through as you're intended to use your Super Hammer to break the otherwise intact grate. This is why we needed the Ultra Hammer earlier, as we can't access the Super Hammer since the Armored Harriers cannot be beaten. We can now force our way forward and confront Grubba after recovering his Crystal Star schematics. To my knowledge, this is the only way Vivian can continue this challenge without any interference from other partners. At least, in regards to mandatory fights as far as I'm really aware. Is it against the spirit of the challenge by skipping required fights entirely? I mean, I guess. But the alternative is accepting that Vivian can't do it all by herself. And I think Yoshi is a big enough ego as is. We gotta accommodate the other partners sometimes. The bad news, however, is you're forced to not only skip most of Chapter 3, which also means giving up an Ice Storm and a lot of star points that would otherwise just have to be in the way, but you're also forced to skip Yoshi as a partner, which means reaching Chapter 4 will be problematic with no easy way to make the jump over to Twilight Town's pipe. It is possible, but that's something we'll have to talk about later. For now, we at least are able to continue without Vivian being able to win a fight yet. It's worth noting as well that the Charged P badge is available as the storm is unlocked, since the game assumes you've opened it as is required to even get this far. By the way, Vivian can beat everything in the Major League except for the bristles. Doesn't matter though, we have a second power block anyway, and even if not, there will be a free Ice Storm up for grabs. There is also just no given chance for Grubba to drain King K or Bandy Andy since we don't progress through the story in Chapter 3. But sure enough, the message has gotten across that we are the favorites to win. I find it weird, by the way, that Vivian lacks dialogue for starting and winning fights here, even though she has dialogue in the comeback run. As for the Macho Grubba fight, it's worth noting that the lack of fighting any enemies throughout the Glitz Pit means Vivian's rather underleveled. Macho Grubba's variety of status buffs ranging from boosting his attack to granting himself evasion while he's fast also lead to a lot of variance throughout the fight. Having access to damage dodge, mushrooms, and less stand badges will carry us far, but it's a far cry from Flurry or Coop's survivability, or Goombella and Yoshi's raw power. So it stands to reason we need some luck to come out of this fight alive. Sure enough, I was able to get a Mushroom Bingo activated which healed Vivian. And I'm convinced she would have fallen had we not gotten it. We really did get lucky. Once we do finish Chapter 3, we see Vivian once again with her sisters as they plot to eliminate us for good. Also, Bowser talks about us cheating. Well, I guess he's technically correct, but he never saw me in Glitzville, so this is some odd dialogue. Anyways, we're back and have now reached the next roadblock of this challenge. How are we to access Twilight Town if we can't use Yoshi to flutter jump where the pipe is? Well, let me show you. This is called a double jump. For this to work, Mario must jump at the highest elevation possible just before the pipes leading to chapters 4 and 7 with Coop smacking Espana lingering nearby, to then run away and jump a second time at the apex of the first jump to just narrowly reach the ledge, allowing you to continue the game. So basically we're playing Celeste. This trick may look simple, but it's actually extremely precise. Both jumps you must do require frame-perfect timing, where Mario is again at the highest point possible. And being frame-perfect isn't even the end of the issues to be had here. It's difficult to even tell when Koops makes contact with Espana, for instance, if how you set up the glitch leaves Espana off screen. And that would mean you're making a blind guess on when to actually jump. The second jump needed to be perfect as well, and needing to know when you regain control of Mario while the screen is still black makes this even more of a nightmare to time. You also need to hold the control stick in a precise direction during the second jump so that you can clip onto the ground. It's somewhere between the top left and just holding straight up on the control stick. I struggle to adequately explain, but another YouTuber by the name of Zansave made a tutorial on how to pull it off. And I'll share his video in the description down below so you can see all that has to go into making this possible. It's times like this I wish I lacked integrity enough to try and cheat, but I've seen what happens when you try to be deceitful.
I like that jump!
No thank you. So now we can go to start chapter 4. As far as how we'll handle the rest of the game without Yoshi, well, that's the bridge we'll cross when we get there.
A pocket controller, dog! A pocket controller!
This game has just dug its own grave. I will make it sorry. After collecting our free shooting star from Eve, an item that does a whole 6 damage to all enemies, we rush the creepy steeple, which thankfully does not need Yoshi at all to do. Koops is needed to access the keys to the shop's storage room and the boss lair, while Flurry is needed to blow past the roadblocks on Twilight Trail. But Yoshi isn't needed for the overworld at all, so skipping him beyond reaching Twilight Town changes absolutely nothing. Before fighting Dupless, I wanted to give Atomic Boo a crack first. So long as you keep a close eye on Mario's HP and you do a good job with guards, you're going to be hard pressed to find yourself in any real danger. There are some dangerous attacks like when a bunch of boos try and scare you into stopping, but again, guards and even some mild healing from mushrooms tend to do the trick. And since Vivian is super rank, you can expect this fight to not take a long time either. Especially when Atomic Boo barely chooses to cover his face, and when it does, we're so close to actually ending the fight, we have no reason to use Veil over just finishing him off. Meanwhile, Dupless is simply not a threat. You can effortlessly beat him with just your basic attack the first go round. Vivian dips temporarily, but I guess she figured her sister sucked. Something tells me Vivian would really love Twitter. Originally, I wanted to just get the letter P so I could tell the Dupless on the return trip, but it turns out the game assumes you've beaten Dupless the first time already if you did do that. Good thing I didn't trust that save block, though it was fun to mess around with Goombella's Tattle since you usually don't have her after Dupless dupes you. Actually, something I forgot to mention is because we have the Ultra Hammer, there's a badge I want to...
Mom? Oh my god.
This is home now, Jack. This is home.
Help! Said somebody some help. I'm dying.
By the way, yeah, there's another game crash here if you encounter Dupless and your partners when Vivian isn't out. The one time a crash happens when it's not specifically her. How ironic. The rematch with Dupless and our partners is also fairly straightforward. And you may have also noticed that he has a Yoshi, who is a partner we've never met in this playthrough. Keep that in mind for later. Because partner badges have no effect here, we can just slap some defensive badges on Mario and continue on with impunity once Vivian returns. The additional HP and attack from being super rank isn't enough to guarantee being able to win this fight itemless, as Dupless's hammer is actually fairly strong, doing 3 damage after a guard. All you really need though is a single mushroom to guarantee a win. Regardless, RNG favors you, so you really shouldn't be too worried, especially where Dupless is concerned. I actually got to a point where I had only 1 HP left while Dupless had 5 after a burn. I guess as a rule to state, if Vivian does fall in battle but the boss later dies to a status like burn, I do consider it a loss on my part, even though Mario's survival is generally the win condition anyway, but here, I care so little about that clause, I just superguard it since it isn't really like Dupless is this towering beacon of terror. After all, look at my old partners. They have a max HP that's so low, Shedinja looks at it and thinks, wow, you're really freaking hollow. So I rematched him and got a mushroom bingo along the way. And that, my friends, should take all the wind out of your sails. Getting your partners back, you'll no doubt notice that Yoshi is among them, even though you never met him in Chapter 3. This is how we get around skipping Yoshi earlier. Because the game expects you to have Yoshi to reach Chapter 4, Dupless is assumed to take him under his control when he steals Goombella, Koops, and Flurry from you. He is thus unlocked as a partner, as the game gives you your old partners back, meaning we essentially stole Duplis Yoshi from him. Funny how that works. Maybe Duplis' real name actually was Gonzalez, but I never tested it. With the techniques you've seen thus far, you can literally imagine that other challenges may be possible, like say, you wanted to play with only Mario, action commands are off limits, or any other challenges that'll remove Yoshi's Globe as an option. This, however, marks where the game is no longer behind Vivian's power curve. And seeing how we're a tad underleveled, this is actually going to signal a point where the game gets to be a little too much for Vivian to handle herself. Yeah, right. Beginning Chapter 5, we are once again entering the realm of required regular enemies with Ember stepping up to us. Of the 7 partners you have, 4 of them can take out fire enemies no problem without the need for items. Vivian is not one of those partners. As a matter of fact, her Fiery Jinx actually makes Ember stronger by healing them and increasing the number of enemies we have to take out. So we're forced to rely on our item reserves here. We still have some resources, as with 1 Power Block, 2 Shooting Stars, with 1 coming from a Mystery, and a couple of Thunder Rages, one of them being found on Keel Hall Key. Most loadouts can be beaten. Unfortunately, being down the ice storm we normally get out of Glitzville makes one wave pretty obnoxious. Not helped by how the time between each attempt can be pretty long, given the locations of both the save blocks and the cutscene in between. It's doable because we still have 1 Shooting Star, but we also need luck with one of our Volt Shrooms. This item grants us Electrified status, making enemies who directly attack us take recoil damage. For the 5 turns it's active, we need to be attacked at least twice per enemy. If luck favors us, we're good to continue and can proceed to challenge Cortez, a boss who is actually pretty easy to check. His unimpressive attack power and low HP per phase makes him rather vulnerable to Vivian's Shade Fist when backed by Power Plus. And if need be, Veil can drag Mario out of sight during Phase 2 so the Bone Rush doesn't harm him. Once Phase 3 rolls around is where Fiery Jinx once again steals the show by Thanos snapping the weapons out of the picture, allowing for a completely dominant showing from the youthful Siren of Fire. Lord Crump and his exiled army aren't too difficult either. Once again, Fiery Jinx is just an excellent move when dealing with multiple targets, and reducing the damage you take in either phase is an invaluable skill. It never hurts to be prepared though, and packing at least some defense courtesy of Defend Plus and Damage Dodge should seriously be considered. Otherwise, it's not unrealistic to get overwhelmed. For me, Vivian did so well that I went for a Super Guard on the final turn before Crump was finished off by his burn just for fun. Not resetting here, I was going to win anyway. We are free to start Chapter 6 now, but we don't want to do that quite yet. If you're familiar with this game, you'll know that we can rank up Vivian once more. But we're not doing that yet. Vivian actually sees very little improvement from being ranked up to Ultra, and she's actually going to be more capable just staying at Super until later. Instead, I'd actually suggest leveling up until you reach level 10 at least. Though since I know the added levels will be needed later, I'm actually springing for 14. This is because I'm future-proofing once we're actually on the train leading to Poshley Heights, as we're trapped in Chapter 6 if we can't successfully beat Smorg. A great place to grind actually is the area specific to Chapter 7, where the Road to Far Outpost has Frost Piranhas and Ice Buffs that award tons of start points upon death. I'd be a fool to not take advantage of this opportunity, especially since fire is actually strong here. Now that we're better geared for the road ahead, let's talk about Smorg. It's here that the game starts requiring that we actually think. Since Fiery Jinx is so expensive, we don't want to spam it if we can help it. We also lack the tools to properly manipulate our HP without some good luck. Smorg's AI is entirely random, and its miasmas all have an attack power of 5 with a very vague guard timing. Assuming we do get lucky, we want to send Smorg below 25 HP when our HP is either at 10 or 4. With either HP value, our HP will plummet to 1 thanks to our defensive badges, so long as we don't guard the Miasma Claw. And since Smorg itself is vulnerable when the Claw is active, another Fiery Jinx and Shade Fist to follow up will end the fight thanks to the Rush badges doing their thing. This is actually the first boss where we suffer deaths. Even with Mega Rush P, Fiery Jinx won't hurt Smorg at all if the Miasmas are active. And my items are limited to only a few mushrooms for healing, which is adequate, but not going to save us if we can't guard whatever necessary. Actually, originally, my strategy did not account for how much FP I need to survive, and it was too late to go back for more items to that effect as I already saved my game on the XX Express. If not for thinking ahead and scavenging an extra golden leaf from Creepy Steeple, we'd be in real trouble. Arriving in Poshi Heights, yeah, this badge had to come on. Way too fitting not to. I'm sorry, who are you again? Chapter 7 has little to really talk about unless I wanted to rant on the backtracking and TTYD, but I'll save that for a future video. Fortunately, the backtracking gives me an opportunity to scavenge items I want for the final chapter, like the hot sauce from the businessman we beat on Poshi Heights. You'd also be smart to empty your pockets before heading to the moon, as a number of items found here will no doubt be worth considering for later. Once finished, it's high time we send Lord Crump and his Magnus 1 Grapple 2.0 blasting off again. The way to go about him is just to Shade Fist unless the X punches are deployed. When that happens, Fiery Jinx. We're given access to tons of defense boosting badges, and that means we can weather the damage out rather well. Even though Magnus 2 has an attack stat of 6 by now. And it's important to wipe the X punches out as soon as possible with Fiery Jinx because they do a whole 9 damage, and that's just lethal. It's a good thing then that the golden leaves in Creepy Steeple, much like horsetails can be scavenged infinitely, are free and are actually decent healing items in their own right. They make the option of spamming Fiery Jinx as much as needed much more viable. For the record, you can also get stronger healing items for HP from Chapter 2's The Great Tree thanks to Batuti's Mystic Eggs. So you'll always have the option to gain some renewable items to restore HP or FP. As long as you keep your guard up, you shouldn't be faced with too much trouble. And that's the 7th Crystal Star and entry into Chapter 8. Let's see how this goes. Well, safe to say, Chapter 8's Palace of Shadow is not pleasant. Don't get me wrong, I love this chapter to death, particularly for the number of bosses it offers, and it helps how thematically appropriate it is given it's Vivian that's taking the lead. But it's here the difficulty for this challenge goes way up. We don't see that at first, as Dark Bones are not threatening if you have an attack that strikes multiple enemies at once. Doesn't hurt either that only in this game and in Paper Mario 64 that bones are weak to fire, so Fiery Jinx ends up being an excellent tool to wipe the bones out quickly. But afterwards? Oh boy. Gloomtail, Gloomtail, Gloomtail. Now here's a demon if I ever saw one. He's given me a lot of trouble 2 years ago, but it's high time we show him what for. Gloomtail's stats are intimidating to say the least, seeing a massive 80 HP, 2 defense, and the variety of moves we face severe opposition from a poisonous breath that pierces our defenses, rendering badges like Defend Plus and Damage Dodge useless, and the bite we can't guard at all. He can also charge a Mega Breath that does a whopping 16 damage to both Mario and Vivian, and an Earthquake that hits Mario specifically for 10 damage unguarded. Pretty big numbers in a game that always had pretty small damage values. Nonetheless, I did have a plan, and it's here my decision to not Ultra Rank Vivian finally begins to make sense. For it to work, we need some odds to swing in our favor. 3 items come to mind that make this fight manageable: a bottle of hot sauce, an HP drain, and a stopwatch. The stopwatch is important as it stops Gloomtail from being able to attack for 3 turns. It doesn't always work, but when it does, the fight from here is basically in the bag as long as I guard everything. Scratch that, almost everything. Afterwards, I hit Gloomtail with an HP drain to both damage him and heal Vivian to an HP value, where the next 2 attacks from Gloomtail drop her to peril. This is why my HP is at 20 max and not yet 30. Not only is it much more difficult to fall to 1 naturally when I'd have to take 29 damage total, or in this case 24 thanks to HP drain, since the damage Gloomtail does basically always has to be 8 since I need P at the down P equipped to be able to win. But I also like to start fights fully healed, so I have to actually work to make rush patches do anything. It otherwise just feels kinda cheap to me, you know? I also have Defend plus P equipped to force Gloomtail's damage towards Vivian to be consistent. Still with me? Good, because now I will let you see the true insanity behind my madness. You see, all of Gloomtail's attacks in the beginning of the fight all have an attack power of 8. But the Poison Breath actually has a chance of poisoning both Mario and Slash or his partner when hit if you don't guard. The solution at first appears to be simple in that you just always guard whenever you can. but then the damage taken from his stomp would be 7, not 8. And Gloomtail can always use the Poison Breath later if he's not forced to use another move due to his HP dropping to a low enough value for the first time. So you'd otherwise have to plan around whether you take 7 or 8 damage to get the most out of Mega Rush P, which makes things nearly impossible. Also, not all of Gloomtail's attacks can be guarded against. After the first turn, he can also opt to bite you, which if he does, you can't guard against it. And that always does 8 damage unless you opt to equip Defend Plus badges. But if you equip more than one, then you're not going to be able to keep the damage uniform, as the Poison Breath is made less powerful through added defense. Alternatively, you can just choose to not guard either the Bite or Gloomtail Stomp, so the damage will always be 8, while the Piercing Poison Breath's 9 thanks to P of the on P is reduced to 8 because of Vivian taking advantage of the Guard Action command. With that now said, I proceed to keep attacking Gloomtail up until I do 31 damage total as he's burned. And now we finally get to use the last item for this fight, the Hot Sauce, which boosts my attack stat by 1 for the next attack. An ordinarily insignificant boost unless you use multiple, which I can't because I'm not allowed to buy items, and the businessman in Glitchfield gives you only one for free, but it's actually perfect for this fight. As Gloomtail drops my HP to 1, the burn lowers its HP to 48, and I'm now able to use Fiery Jinx 3 more times, avoiding the Earthquake entirely as Mario tanks it, with the first Fiery Jinx dropping Gloomtail from 48 HP to only 32 before burn damage activates. Next, 16 as now the Hot Sauce is exhausted after an attack, before the burn drops him to 15, and the final Fiery Jinx knocks him out just a turn after he charges his Mega Breath, only barely being enough to lock in a win. Trust me when I say it's probably not as complicated as it sounds. I sometimes just like to hear myself talk, but it's certainly a more decisive win compared to what Vivian's last adventure had done. Every fight after Gloomtail though, yeah, I got nothing. There's no longer any real turn-by-turn strategies I can come up with anymore, and reliance on luck is just going to become all the more important. Case in point, the floor got Moth with me when I tried to fight them with only 20 max HP. Because of this, there's not really a good reason to delay ranking Vivian to Ultra rank, so say hello to 30 max HP. Looking at the Redux fight with the Shadow Sirens, there's really no reason to not just start going all in with items I won't use later. So I went and started winging it. With Double Dip P allowing me to use 2 items in a single turn, I deployed items that could trigger status summons in hopes of reducing how much abuse Vivian would be taking from his sisters and, I guess, stepbrother. Then I'm just going to start spamming Fiery Jinx and hope for the best. RNG was a real hassle to work around here. Decided if there was any time Mini Mr. Mini would be useful, it'd be here, but it turns out that Marilyn's magic doesn't care if she's tiny, and Beldam's Blizzard isn't affected either. It really is a worthless item. Ignoring that, the statuses on Beldam's side tend to be pretty feral. This 2-timing Tundra Troglodyte has access to both slow and fast statuses that she'll use to either hinder our damage or speed up our downfall. And if Marilyn is made fast, you're in for a truly nightmarish time, as she'll zap you out of existence faster than you can say Zeus. Not only can her charge help her bypass my last stand badges, but the lightning itself can't even be guarded. It's all really just a matter of the AI being unable to attack you while you're able to attack it. Sleepy Sheep seemed like a decent option, but more often than not, the Sirens would awaken after the first Fiery Jinx, rendering my efforts futile as sleep is useless if the enemy wakes up after only one attack. Remember, I don't really have the luxury to set up with all the items I want, and I need to be strategic. Once, I did actually see Beldam be put to sleep, where she stayed asleep for an unnaturally long time, given she was also suffering from a burn, and each time she takes damage is a chance for her to wake up. And though I did end up winning the fight, it was only after Vivian went down, so I wasn't comfortable with this result. It seemed like Lady Luck admired my integrity to stick to my rules though, as the very next attempt saw me give up on both Sleepy Sheep and Mini Mr. Mini entirely, instead of relying on the less reliable Stopwatch. Stopped is a stronger yet shorter lasting status, but it's considerably less likely to work. Despite worse odds though, the Stopwatch managed to time all 3 Sirens out, leaving Vivian to freely bully her own sisters and Gonzalo's with Fiery Jinx, burning the witches like the satanic. Was that too harsh? Grodus, much like the Shadow Sirens rematch, just feels like a lot of luck is involved. And it doesn't help that I'm going to be forced to fight Bowser and Kambi Koopa immediately after. Before going at them, I snagged some shooting stars from further into Palace of Shadow, and headed back out to get the strange sack out of the pit of one of the trials. Most of this area isn't notable, and the shooting stars were just for the 40s due to the presence of lava bubbles. Enemies Vivian can't touch at all. From here on out, we should be good to go for Grotus. Going all in on power plus Ps and damage dodges for both Mario and Vivian is once again a good idea. This is also probably the only time in the whole game since Red Bones where Fire Flowers have legitimate utility in being less overkill for Grotus X's so you can save your FP for Fiery Jinx, and keep on the offensive for as long as possible. Beyond that tactic, there is very little within Vivian's control when Grotus can cast all sorts of annoying magic spells, from attacking skills to the mother of all annoyance, dodgy status. Fortunately, not only did I never see dodgy be cast, but I also won without any live streams being exhausted, despite missing that my HP must not be high enough to guarantee survival. So that's something. Once he's behind this, hopefully you level up immediately after, because Bowser and Kambi Koopa drop in the rain on your parade. If you have any leftover Volt Shrooms or Spite Pouches, here's a good time to put them to work. Since we never encountered Bowser in Chapter 3, this is actually the first time we've ever met in this game. That's really funny to think about. But his kit involves breathing fire for 7 damage on both Mario and his partner, a bite that also does 7 damage and can poison but only to whoever's in front, and well, he's supposed to ground pound so I can talk about that move, but he actually will never use it if he takes recoil on his first cycle of alternating his 3 attacks. Kambi Koopa meanwhile can either attack for 5 damage regardless of your position, heal for 8 HP, or cast a ton of beneficial status buffs on herself or Bowser. They can be as pointless as boosted defense or as powerful as casting invisibility for a couple of turns. Worst case scenario, Kambi can very well delay the fight indefinitely if she really wanted to, since I am not willing to equip P at the on P for this and Grotus. But just because it can happen doesn't mean it will, and sure enough, this fight would end before too long. I did forget to bring some FE restoring items though beyond the gradual syrup, but it's probably the best time to use it here since survivability is definitely higher here than on the final boss. So though both of these fights together were rather taxing on my items, Vivian managed to pull through just fine. Before the final boss, I'd like to extend a thank you to my channel members, especially Switchy for your monthly donations. And if you'd like to see your name in my future videos, please check out the members tab underneath this video. With an inventory full of powerful healing items, seriously, this game just vomits ultra and live streams on you to the end of the game, it's high time we dethrone the Shadow Queen once and for all. This witch is loaded with powerful attacks ranging from bolts of shadowy lightning to a version of Veil that actually does damage. And in Phase 2, she gains even more devastating tools, like the Nuclear Dark Pulse, or various breaths capable of inflicting negative status elements like Poison or Confusion. And with the ability to attack multiple times in a single turn, it's easy to get overwhelmed. However, there are some big differences between now and then when Vivian first attempted this fight. First of all, we're actually lower leveled being only level 20 as opposed to 21. But secondly, and most importantly, it's probably the number of items I'm allowed to hold. With a max of 20, it's much less of a challenge having to decide what to bring. If I think I need something, odds are I have it, and I can pretty liberally use it if I feel pressured. For this reason, despite having to use 2 Ultra Shrooms during Phase 1, I don't even blink. After all, that's what they're there for, healing when my HP is low. And it's not like I'll be relying on Mega Rush P here when the Shadow Queen soon becomes invincible and I'd have to heal anyway, or sacrifice boost cheats to minimize live stream usage. This allows my live streams to last as long as they need to, and the final fight after seeing all the people we've apparently met cheer us on. Seriously, who are all these people in Glitzville? I've never met them before. Apparently Rock Hawk thinks he's pretty dang important though, he even called me out in the Chapter 6 intermission. We're helped further by seeing our stats maxed out by Peach. So let's go over the game plan now that the true final battle has begun. Since there's a scripted Shine Sprite bingo at the beginning of the fight, I can maximize my damage outside of peril using a Power Punch and some Fiery Jinxes knowing my stats will be maxed out anyway. And I burn the Shadow Queen's Dark Pulse through this strategy. Now my focus is just to find a way to smash the Shadow Queen with fire, and I'm looking for a way to ease Vivian into peril. But it turns out the Shadow Queen opened the way for me by charging when my HP is 14. It was really a win-win situation here. Hit the guard, Vivian enters peril for free, and I can initiate a big attack. Miss, and both Vivian and Mario share a life shroom, and I just continue with my plan to trigger peril myself since after using enough Fiery Jinxes, My FP will be primed for the point swap to drop me to 1 HP after double dip, and I healed the then boost sheet and start spamming fire. Because I landed the guard though, Vivian's able to reap about 45 damage in 3 turns before being KO'd and activating another life shroom, with Mario seeing his health restored to max. It no doubt helped a lot that the Shadow Queen focused much more on Vivian even when she's invisible, which also denied the Shadow Queen potential HP from trying to steal. It was here I noticed a Mushroom Mingo lined up. At that moment, I thought I was prepared to cheat death by launching a final devastating strike that would lead to my HP being bungee jumped out of peril. But I missed the bingo, and another one bites the dust. The fight then proceeds as normal with me using Fiery Jinx while also mixing in opportunities to keep Vivian healthy and the Shadow Queen's hands down. It's around here I make an initially goofy bluff using a point swap on Vivian to hit 3 HP, expecting the Shadow Queen to knock her out, but she actually drops my HP into peril a second time, finally healing off me, but ending up falling victim to my less MP badges keeping me afloat. One final Fiery Jinx isn't enough to KO, but her left and right hands were just eliminated, and so she has no chance of healing this turn. She knocks Vivian out once more, but it's no use. Another spare life shroom brings Vivian back into the fight, and she's unable to finish me up for good, falling victim to her burn. And with that, Vivian has beaten Paper Mario the 1000-Year Door entirely by herself. There are only 2 words I have left to say. Sayonara, bitch! So, can you beat Paper Mario the 1000-Year Door with only Vivian? Well, technically no, since you don't start the game with her unless you can use cheats like I do. But if you could, yeah, you definitely can beat the game using only her. You just watched a video showing just that being possible after all. But it's not an easy task by any means. I needed a lot of planning and a lot of knowledge to make this challenge possible. And it's safe to say without certain glitches, this could have ended very differently. I do still consider Vivian a below average partner for battle without these conditions, but it speaks to a certain level of versatility if she can beat the game given the limited resources we've allowed for her. Give a round of applause to Vivian, everyone. She truly has risen above the ashes. We also have to update the leaderboard, however, seeing that she's actually able to finish the game below level 21, still needing 0 shot points to pull it off. Rest assured though, she's at least as good as Bobbery. Congratulations on your redemption, Vivian. I'm so very proud of you, and you truly earned it. Now, if there is another partner you want to see me given a reprise, post down below with a comment on who you'd most like to see next. Just don't ask for Flurry, she got her reprise already. If you don't want to wait, you can check out my playlist of partner-only challenges, and check out a video featuring them now if you so wish. I'll see y'all later, and thanks for watching.